Inside the Magic, show number 334 for August 28th, 2011. It is Sunday, August 28th, 2011. This is show 334 of Inside the Magic, and as always, I'm your host, Ricky Briganti. Got another great show packed with Disney and theme park news and a whole lot more fun. And before we get started with all of that, I do invite you to head on over to our website at InsideTheMagic.net. There you'll find all of our podcasts, videos, photos, news, articles, and so much more. And if you've ever have any news tips or questions, you can contact me by writing to Ricky at InsideTheMagic.net, or you can call and leave a message at 407-494-4ITM. That's 4486. And now, let's get on with the show. This week's episode of Inside the Magic is brought to you by Magical Travel. If you are hungry for a great deal, Walt Disney World is once again offering its free dining offer for select dates between August 28th, which is today, until March 31st of 2012. Quite a long time, but you're going to want to book now for the best availability. So call Magical Travel today at 866-207-8387 or visit them online at magicaltravel.com to receive a free price quote. And be sure to mention Inside the Magic when you inquire with them to receive your free Disney gift card for qualifying bookings when you book your Disney vacation with Magical Travel. And by Audible, get a free audiobook download at audibletrial.com/InsideTheMagic. There's over 85,000 titles to choose from for your iPod or MP3 player, and you can get a free audiobook as well. And thanks very much to Andrew Hinn and all of our other monthly recurring donation subscribers, or anybody who contributes to the show in any way. If you enjoy what we do, head on over to InsideTheMagic.net. You'll find plenty of ways to support us. And now, let's start off the show with our trip around the world. So it feels like I just sat down to record the last episode of Inside the Magic. Of course, that was show 333, a very big show. It was nearly 3 hours long, talking all about the 2011 D23 Expo. And believe it or not, in all of that time talking about it, I just kind of scratched the surface. I of course talked my way through everything that I did throughout the entire 3-day extravaganza that was the D23 Expo, but I do still have quite a lot more to share from the event, a lot of audio of the presentations that were given, and what I'll be sharing a little bit later in this week's show, which are some exclusive interviews where you should learn some details about ongoing Disney projects that you should be pretty excited about. In addition, we'll also be talking about a few other things on this week's show, so stay tuned for all of that. And since it's only been a few days since the last show, since I recorded it, a couple of days later than usual, there isn't as much Disney news this week as there is normally when a full week has gone by since the last show. However, there is still some Disney news to get to, so let's jump right into that. And let's see. Let's lead off with a fun story this week where Disney is very excited to show off their new Mickey Mouse pretzel out here in Orlando at Walt Disney World. In fact, they were so excited they wrote about it on their official Disney Parks blog. Right now, it's in a testing phase, as they put it, over at the Frontierland pretzel wagon at the Magic Kingdom. I haven't had one yet, but I'm going to have to grab one. It looks pretty tasty. And they're also in California. They're at Disneyland, the Refreshment Corner, Bengal Barbecue, Frontierland Pretzel, Small World Pretzel, and Tomorrowland Pretzel, as well as California Adventure Park at Bayside Brews, the Beer Truck, and Hollywood Pretzel. But it's a Mickey-shaped pretzel. You can't go wrong with that. It's like a hot pretzel and soft, and it sure looks good. Gonna have to get one next time I'm in the parks, and I'll tell you all about it. I'm sure it's very tasty. Not a lot of news is going on when that's the top story here, but there are some really exciting stories actually this week. So moving on to the next one, actually, the Moms Panel, Walt Disney World Moms Panel, is something that's been very popular for a number of years now. Many apply each year to be part of this panel to go online and officially answer on behalf of Disney questions from people all over the world about planning trips and Disney topics in general. Well, this year, Walt Disney World Moms Panel is expanding. The application period for the 2012 panel begins on September 12th, so just a couple of weeks from now. And they're expanding it not only Walt Disney World, also going to include Disney Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, Disney Beach Resorts, and Disneyland Resort. So much more to come out of the Moms panel. If you're interested in joining up, you don't even have to be a mom. Actually, there have been quite a few dads on the Disney World Moms panel as well. So if you think you have what it takes for that, head on over to DisneyWorldMoms.com and give it a shot. So out here at Walt Disney World, the topic we talked about quite some time ago is Golden Oak, which is the really, really expensive homes that are being built on Walt Disney World property. And they're millions of dollars, quite literally millions of dollars for these homes. And those homes have been in construction. We haven't really heard much up until this week, where apparently early buyers into this Golden Oak community on Walt Disney World property are now preparing to move in to their Golden Oak homes. They're actually the first 3 Showcase Village homes are now recently completed and furnished. And so, if you've got a heck of a lot of money, a whole lot more than I do, you could live on Walt Disney World property. Actually, this week Disney released a first look at one of the homes. It looks really, really beautiful, and I hope to be able to go over there pretty soon and check it out in person. But it's certainly well out of my price range, as there's a lot of amenities for those who buy early. Actually, you get to this special annual pass where you get to get in up to 4 people into the parks whenever you want, and you get like door-to-door service and personal shopping and all kinds of other features. Well, you know what? If you pay millions and millions of dollars for a house, I would hope you get all kinds of special bonus features like that. But it's still pretty interesting that pretty soon some people are actually going to literally live at Walt Disney World. So it was also announced this week, completely different from that Walt Disney World has now partnered up with Arnold Palmer Golf Management in a 20-year strategic alliance. It begins on September 25th, in which Arnold Palmer is, not the person, but the company is going to operate, manage, maintain, and help promote all 5 of the Walt Disney World golf courses. So Disney is not going to be doing their own management of those golf courses beginning in just a few weeks. And some exciting, potentially exciting news for Vacation Club members if you want to invest in an extra special celebration when you arrive to your Vacation Club destination. Pretty soon you will be able to have access as a Vacation Club member to the exclusive DVC Welcome Celebration option, where you show up at your DVC home away from home. You get greeted welcome home not only by cast members but also by a sash put on your door, and on the back side of that sash it'll say member since, specifically for your group, how long you've been a DVC member. There could potentially be some footprints on the floor, Mickey Mouse footprints that double as mouse pads, and Mickey plush will be waiting for you on the bed, and there's more that they're developing as part of this welcome celebration package. Of course, it's something you have to purchase, and you're going to want to go over to DisneyFlorist.com at the end of August, which is pretty much right now, so I imagine any day now if it's not already there. And if you want some extra special magic when you show up for your DVC stay at Walt Disney World, that's something you could invest in. Of course, coming to Walt Disney World's already pretty magical enough, but sounds like could be fun if you want something a little extra. All right, moving away from the parks, but staying right here in Orlando over at the Florida Mall. This week, the newest mall Disney store has opened up. It's one of those new Imagination Park locations. They've opened a number of these worldwide, and this is the first one in the Orlando area. The nearest one to Walt Disney World prior to this was over in Tampa, and so now if you visit the Florida Mall, which is sort of close to Universal, that's probably the closest theme park, maybe in between Universal and SeaWorld. It's over on Orange Blossom Trail and Sand Lake Road or so. There you'll find this the new Disney Store location, or you can go over to InsideTheMagic.net, where I've posted a gallery of photos, see what this store looks like. Of course, if you've been to any of the new Imagination Park locations, it pretty much looks exactly the same as any of those. And I had read that another Disney store just like this is going to be coming to the Mall of Millennia, which is also in Orlando, and that one's actually a bit closer to Walt Disney World. And this week is going to be pretty big news in the world of Halloween. Disney's not really doing anything terribly new this year. It's going to be Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party once again, which is always a fun party. I will be going to it in a couple of weeks just to, check it out as I always do. But Universal Studios, Universal Orlando, is gearing up its annual Halloween Horror Nights event, and the details are coming out very soon. In fact, August 31st, just a couple of days from now, is when they're going to be releasing all of the details about what their event is about, though it appears a bit leaked out within the last couple of days, courtesy of Burger King, which is one of their longtime partners. They managed to post, at least one Burger King location posted an early advertisement that maybe should not have gone up yet, giving an early look at Lady Luck, who is seems to be the icon for this year's event. But there's much, much more to her that we haven't learned yet, so we're just going to have to stay tuned about how all of that comes together for the Halloween event this year, which I am, needless to say, very excited about. Let's jump coasts now to California, where tomorrow, August 29th, there's going to be the beginning of some more big changes over at Disney California Adventure Theme Park. Sunshine Plaza area is going to close as of tomorrow to begin the makeover into Buena Vista Street, which looks like it's going to be a phenomenal makeover of the sort of kitschy, postcardy, touristy version of the entrance of California Adventure. It's going to become this 1920s, 1930s look at what Los Angeles and that whole area was like when Walt Disney showed up. Really a total makeover of the whole entranceway. And so what's going to happen during this transformation, guests will still enter through the new entrance of California Adventure, the Pan Pacific Auditorium looking entranceway. And right after passing through that, there's going to be a temporary walkway leading over to the Condor Flats area of the park. And that's going to be the temporary entrance and exit to California Adventure while all of this is going on. And that's actually going to be for quite a while. It's only August of 2011 right now, and it's actually going to continue all the way through 2012. So, going into California Adventure is going to continue to be construction zone for quite a while, but it's all going to be worth it in just a few months when it all is said and done, and the theme park is much, much improved. So I look forward to seeing all of that. Buena Vista Street certainly looks like a fantastic, addition, a change to what is there now, and sometime next year we'll get to see it all unveiled. Now, here in the news, I'll mention real quick that tomorrow, August 29th, is going to be the first day that guests will be officially checking in at Disney's newest resort. It's Disney's first resort out in Hawaii. It's called Aulani, and it's a Disney resort and spa in Hawaii, and we're going to be talking more about that later in this week's show. Speaking of travel around beyond the United States, of course, we've mentioned before that coming up in October, Rapunzel is going to officially become a Disney princess. And it's going to happen at Kensington Palace in London on October 2nd in a Disney Princess Royal Court, a big event that's going to be happening. And it's not something that I'll be able to attend, of course. It's, way over in London. But you potentially have a chance to to win a trip over there to see this coronation ceremony, if you will. If you go to princessmoment.disney.go.com, there is an online video contest aimed at young girls, and don't get too excited yet, although parents can help out if the girls are unable to do it for themselves. It's called My Princess Moment. The story begins with you. You can find all the details at that website that I just mentioned. You have to enter by September 12th in order to have a chance of winning this grand prize trip to London to see Rapunzel become officially a Disney princess. Now let's talk DVD and home releases that are coming up in just a couple of days. August 30th, this Tuesday, Prom. Disney's Prom is coming home, as is Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas 3D. So if you've got a 3D TV, 3D Blu-ray player, you'll be able to see the 3D version of Nightmare Before Christmas. You'll also be able to get Cougar Town, the complete second season, ABC show, of course, as well as the ABC show Desperate Housewives, the complete 7th season. Let's talk Marvel here for a second. Of course, last week on the show, or just a few days ago, I guess it was, I was talking all about the D23 Expo, and Marvel had a pretty big arena presentation there in which the head of Marvel, Joe Quesada, was doing his Cup of Joe presentation, as he said. And one of the things that I noted that he said in that presentation is when Bob Iger was talking to him and Marvel about bringing Marvel into the Disney family, he said they didn't, Disney did not want to touch Marvel. They wanted to just leave it alone, let Marvel be Marvel, and that Disney was just interested in bringing it all together under one company. Well, this week that seems to be changing, at least just a little bit. Disney had bought Marvel just 2 years ago. It's been less than 2 years, actually, and now Marvel's marketing heads, the executives in charge of marketing there, have been given the boot. Disney is stepping in order to take over the marketing of Marvel and their properties, at least of, So, slow changes, subtle, well, maybe not so subtle, but slow changes over at Marvel. We'll have to wait and see if that continues or if that is the extent of Disney's specific involvement with Marvel, but I would highly doubt that. I bet there will be more Disney taking a hold of certain parts of the company now that they own them. And it came out this week in an online survey that Disney is considering, in the world of video games, creating a sequel to Disney Epic Mickey, which was a successful game in dollars, but a lot of complaints about gameplay issues. Regardless, a lot of people had fun with Epic Mickey, and now Disney's considering a sequel, Disney Epic Mickey 2, potentially for Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. It may feature a two-player split screenplay this time instead of just one player, and you could play as Mickey or Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald's potential characteristics and fighting abilities would be able to fly like a helicopter or use some electricity to fight or solve challenges, much like Mickey was using paint and thinner in the original. Potential titles for this sequel are Epic Mickey 2, Return of the Mad Doctor, Epic Mickey 2, Mystery on Mean Street, Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two, or just plain Epic Mickey 2. But all of that is still up in the air. Disney has not officially announced that game to actually exist or be in the works. They're just kind of getting a feel as to whether or not people are interested. And one last bit of news this week, which came as a shocker in the technology community. Steve Jobs resigned as the CEO of Apple, which he has been for many years now, but apparently he will remain, even though he has resigned there, will remain on the Walt Disney Company's board of directors. Jobs, ever since the acquisition of Pixar by Disney, which of course Jobs was one of the founders of, Jobs has become majority shareholder of the Walt Disney Company. He's been on the board of directors, and he'll still be around. He's also been named the chairman of the Apple board, and it should also be noted that Jobs, by his own request, is not being paid to be on the board. And that'll do it for your news from around the world this week. And this week's tip comes in from Josh from the Daily Ticket on Twitter. And Josh writes, I've got something for your listeners. I'm not sure I would call it a tip, but it is a story with a moral, I guess you could say. A few days ago, my friend and I were considering riding a water ride that we do not frequent. We wanted to experience the attraction because we really enjoy it, but neither of us are too keen to queue for a water ride, especially early in the day. Nevertheless, we did decide to queue, and I figured we must secure our belongings as the ride has quite a reputation for making all riders completely soaked. I figured my keys would be fine, and my wallet would probably be fine if I covered it well with my hindquarters. However, my phone's safety concerned me. I have an iPhone, and I did not want it to be exposed to the elements. Not wanting to go through the process of renting a locker just for my phone, we got to some quick thinking, since I, like most of your listeners, have guide maps engraved in my brain, I removed the park guide map from my pocket that I always pick up anyway and gently folded it around my phone. My phone sported its new miniature poncho very well, and as I exited the attraction, I was completely drenched from head to toe, but it protected my iPhone, which braved the adventure well. So I suppose the tip here is that improvisation can go a long way in the parks. Josh, that's a very unique tip. We've talked about staying out of the rain and staying dry in the rain and tips like that, but I have not ever heard of anybody using a guide map to protect a phone. There's certainly very glossy paper that those guide maps are printed on. As long as it's not the Times Guide, it's the actual guide map, then that it sounds like it worked. I wouldn't necessarily use the same map repeatedly because it is paper and it'll get waterlogged eventually, but for just a quick once through a ride, sounds like that worked pretty well. Or, you could just grab a Disney bag or any kind of bag or something like that is another good way to do it. All right, everybody else out there, email your tips into tips@insidethemagic.net. Got some great main features to share on this week's show, but before we get to all of that, let me put in a quick word about Lanyard Lab. If you went to our Inside the Magic meet, you received a Lanyard Lab lanyard. If I got around to you, hopefully I did. I was handing out some Inside the Magic lanyards that we produced. If you want to make your own custom lanyard with your business name, convention name, for a school, church, any kind of organization, head on over to lanyardlab.com. There you'll be able to get a price quote and receive back a digital proof showing you exactly what your lanyards will look like. You can place your order online. It is as simple as that. So check it out over at lanyardlab.com. So last week, of course, I talked extensively about the D23 Expo, as I was saying earlier, and this week I've got a bit more to share about the topic, but in a very different way than we did last week. Last week, of course, was me just blabbing for about 2.5 hours with just a couple of audio clips here and there about my experiences, and now I've got some of your experiences to share, as well as some really great interviews from the D23 Expo that I got to talk to some Imagineers and some really wonderful people that shared some great information about ongoing Disney projects. It's kind of a follow-up to the D23 Expo, if you will, and in the coming weeks I'll be sharing some more presentation audio as well, but I thought this was some of the more interesting, not that the other stuff isn't interesting, but some of the more interesting items for me to share here. First, I do want to mention something that I posted a few days ago, just after doing the show, the show 333. I posted it on Twitter and Facebook that I noticed a very strange coincidence that not only, as I mentioned last week, that I was recording this D23 Expo show on August 23rd, but I was actually recording it during the 23rd hour of the day, and it was the 233rd day of the year. Lots of 23s. Totally unplanned and by accident, just kind of worked out that way. I guess D23 is now ingrained in my brain. But also this week I have posted a bit more from the D23 Expo over on the website. Best way to find all of everything that I posted, videos and articles and all of that kind of thing, over at insidethemagic.net/D23 Expo. Most recently, I think just on Friday, I posted most of the speeches given at the Disney Legends ceremony, including all the Disney princess voices, Regis Philbin and Lisa and Brian Henson as well. And then, of course, the performances that were there as well. So if you were interested in seeing and hearing those speeches, head on over to the website for that and so much more. And so now I want to share an email that came in regarding the D23 Expo from Roger, who was writing in response to my comments last week that, of course, I had a press pass for the D23 Expo, which allowed me to skip not all the lines, but a good portion of the lines that were there. And so I didn't necessarily have a chance to report completely accurately as somebody who stood in the lines. Of course, the press pass allowed me to get into more presentations, and because of that, I was able to report on more, which is why I was given that. However, the part of the D23 Expo experience as it was standing in lines. And, I'm no stranger to standing in lines. I stood in many, many hours worth of lines, most recently at the San Diego Comic-Con, and happily did that to get into some of the presentations that I really wanted to. But that doesn't mean I'm able to speak about the D23 Expo, having not stood in many lines there. So, back to Roger and his email. Let me go ahead and read this. Roger writes, I enjoyed your D23 coverage in the last podcast. I traveled from Oregon to Anaheim with my son and 2 grandsons for D23. Having seen coverage from the first expo, we were prepared for long lines for the events, but to endure long lines and then be denied entrance to events due to their being full led to a very disappointing experience. We never got into an arena event, and we were unprepared to wait in line 4 or more hours. On the second day, after waiting in lines for 2 hours, we were told the panel is full and that the overflow was also full. Many of the staff did not seem to know how lines worked or what capacities were. Only after making a complaint to the Welcome Center were we guaranteed a seat at the early evening Imagineering panel. That was excellent. This was done via a service recovery coupon issued by a staffer when I complained. We got into the Cars Land panel only by enduring a wait of 3 hours on Sunday in a room where we lined up like cattle. Disney oversold the event, and our experience was not dissimilar to many who expressed their concerns on the D23 Facebook page. I recognize that I could have sprung for the more expensive tickets, but to spend that amount was beyond our resources, and even being a D23 member did not provide significant benefits. I basically had to apologize to my son for the poor organization that led to a frustrating experience. In my career, I have organized and implemented large conferences. You simply do not plan large arena sessions that cannot handle more than a fraction of the attendees. To advertise the arena sessions as Disney did and then make it impossible for most attendees to experience the biggest sessions is unprofessional and rude. While reports like yours provide a more thorough account of the expo, they cannot provide your audience a view that will be experienced by the average attendee. Media access is not what tens of thousands experienced. On the positive side, the Imagineering session and Cars Land panel were great, as were the exhibits, and my grandson and son loved having their books signed by Ridley Pearson, an experience possible only by choosing to pass on the Disney Legends session. But these highlights do not add up to an overall positive experience. Again, your podcast provided a fuller picture of the expo, but not one that could be enjoyed by the average guest. I'm a real Disney fan with a DVC membership and many annual trips to Disney World all the way from Oregon. I enjoy your show as one of the saner podcasts. Keep up the good work. Well, Roger, certainly an interesting perspective and you know what, not an uncommon perspective about the D23 Expo. I've read many a complaint very similar to yours on, as you said, on Facebook and on Twitter and on a number of Disney message boards that the lines, you know, even those who expected the lines didn't expect the lines as they were. And I think the important point, the most important point that you made there was in amounts of people versus number of seats. If Disney expected thousands and thousands of people on any given day, and then they held presentations that only held a fraction of that amount of people, knowing full well, based on 2009 experience in the first expo, how many people were actually interested, there's definitely some mismanagement and some poor planning to be found there, and I completely agree with that. I actually did a quick poll after reading your email over on the Inside the Magic Facebook. I asked the question for those who paid for a regular admission ticket to the D23 Expo, what your experience was in dealing with crowds and lines for the presentations, and 38%, that's about a third, a little more than a third of people who responded to this poll said that they waited in long lines, got into arena presentations, but never made it into a stage presentation. And that's a huge part of it. You know, the arena presentations were certainly important, and they were huge. Thousands of people got to go in there, and it sounds like about a third, a little more than a third of people got to experience those presentations that wanted to. But the stage presentations were considerably smaller. There were 2 rooms, stage 23 and stage 28, much fewer seats than in the arena, and people who wanted to get into those could not. Likewise, 29% of respondents, so not that far behind, are also roughly a third, a little bit less than a third of people, said waited in long lines, got into the arena, and got into the stage presentation. So definitely a mixture there. About 2/3 of people got into the arena, which is a pretty good statistic considering that there was a lot going on the floor, other things going on at the same time as arena presentations, as you said, celebrity meet and greets and that kind of thing on the expo floor. So there were other things to do during those arena presentations. And if 2/3 of people did get into those, leaving only a third to be not disappointed, of course, that you waited hours in line and potentially didn't get in. But, perhaps that's an acceptable margin when it comes to a convention. Not everybody can get into something. If you're expecting 10,000 people to an event in a day. Not that many people can fit into that arena. I mean, that's a massive event to have 10,000 people in an audience. It was less than half of that who were in that audience. So I can see both sides of it. It is disappointing to not get in, but at the same time, you can't pack that many people into one place for that type of presentation. The rest of the poll, 11% said he waited into long lines, got into stage rooms, but not the arena. So it sounds like he made a choice to skip the big long lines for the arena and go into the stage presentations instead. Another 11% said he waited in long lines and did not get into any presentations, and that's a bit disturbing of a statistic. If 11% of people who went to the expo were interested in both arena and stage presentations and did not get into either of them despite waiting in long lines, that's pretty frustrating. I can imagine paying to have a trip, paying the expenses of a hotel and plane fare, and then the tickets to get into the D23 Expo. That's potentially hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for a family to all get in there, and then to wait in long lines and still not get in. That's a bit frustrating. And then there's the 11% who responded to the poll and said, I didn't even try to get into the presentations because the lines were simply too long, just gave up and did something else. So that's really 22% that didn't get in. Of course, my sampling size here was very small based on just the respondents on the Inside the Magic Facebook page. I would love to hear, officially how many people waited and got in and didn't get in, how many people there. Of course, Disney will never release that type of information. So this small sampling is all I personally have to go with, but I think it's probably a decent indication in general of how the D23 Expo went as a whole. And while I appreciate the fact that I was able to get into just about everything that I wanted to, I did skip a few things here and there in order to bring more coverage. I was editing video and posting photos and writing up articles and that kind of thing, so I had to skip a few presentations. But, it's good. It's both good and bad. It seems like a lot of people got in, but there are a fair amount of people who did not, and Disney perhaps could have prepared a bit better by offering either more presentations going on at the same time, more things to do on the floor, or potentially better line management. So that is that about the lines and the crowds about the D23 Expo. So now let's focus our attention on some more interesting and exciting things that came out of the D23 Expo. Of course, the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts exhibit there on the pavilion, as it was called, on the show floor was arguably the best thing to see at the D23 Expo. Having a chance to not only walk through this exhibit and see ride vehicles and models and concept art and plenty of things that hadn't been shown off before, even some research projects. Not only that, but the best part about this pavilion is being able to chat one-on-one with the Imagineers that are behind these projects. Now, these aren't just, as I remember saying this back in 2009, this is one of my favorite parts about the Expo. These are Imagineers who literally worked on these projects. Sometimes they are lead Imagineers on the project. In fact, quite often they were. These are not just representatives of Imagineering. These aren't PR people. These are literally the Imagineers that worked on these projects that are being presented there, that are ongoing in the Disney parks. And that alone, if you really had a chance to go to the D23 Expo and you missed out on walking through this pavilion and stopping to talk to the people who were there, you missed out on a big part of the expo. And I don't think I mentioned that in my my D23 Expo planning show, which I probably should have, that this was one of the most entertaining and informative and best parts of the D23 Expo is having a chance one-on-one to just step aside and talk to the Imagineers. And of course, that is exactly what I did this time around. One of the biggest projects going on at a Disney theme park right now is the expansion of Fantasyland out here in Florida at Walt Disney World at the Magic Kingdom. And a lot of details are out there. Of course, they had the big model on display there at the D23 Expo, showing off a lot of details that are from this new Fantasyland expansion. A lot has been released online and through presentations, but even more has not been said, and I wanted to find out about that even more. So there at the D23 Expo, I talked with Imagineer Scott Mallwitz, who's the concept architect on Fantasyland, on the new Fantasyland expansion. And he not only gave me a complete overview of everything that is coming to the park, which I know a lot of anybody who hasn't necessarily been paying attention specifically to all the details in there might have overlooked this or that. So he gave me an overview, but also answered some questions about a few specifics. So now I want to take you over to to the D23 Expo to hear from an Imagineer firsthand exactly what is going into New Fantasyland out here at the Magic Kingdom and plenty more.
Hi, I'm Scott Mallwitz. I'm the overall concept architect on the Fantasyland expansion in Orlando.
Behind you is a ginormous model of New Fantasyland in Florida. Can we just walk through all these changes that are coming to the Magic Kingdom?
Absolutely, yeah. This is a quarter scale model, which means for every quarter inch, it's 1 foot in real life, right? So what we'll do is we'll start over at the castle wall, which actually frames the castle courtyard, which the carousel sits in the middle. So for the first time, the castle tournament look that the carousel is so famous for will be completed by a wall and kind of capturing the guests as they enter and around the castle to kind of complete that whole castle story of Fantasyland. Moving through the castle wall, you start to experience the Fantasyland forest for all it is. And the Fantasyland forest is the home of all the great stories of princesses and princes and all the wonderful stories that you know, including the story of Belle and Beast. We are introducing Maurice's cottage, so you get to meet Belle and have some playtime with her. The Beast Castle, you'll be able to dine in the West Wing, very forbidden West Wing where the castle or the rose is, and for the first time be able to eat in the ballroom where the Beast and Belle dance for the very first time. We also are recreating the village, including Gaston's Tavern and the bookstore where Belle often borrowed and sometimes bought books. So this whole wonderful French countryside is being recreated in kind of one corner. Around the corner from that story, on the seashore, you'll see Prince Eric's castle. The tide has gone out, and we encounter tide pools and castle caverns where as the tide has gone out and receded, you get to explore the underside, the foundation of Prince Eric's castle. And in that foundation, you'll wind your way through the catacombs, and just before the tide comes back in, you'll board your vehicle and you go under the sea to experience Under the Sea with Ariel. Coming around after that experience, exiting out from a waterfall, there's a chance to meet Ariel in her grotto underneath these waterfalls out here in front, right? Which brings us up to this end of the expansion. And this end of the expansion is a little different story beat for us, but what's happening here is around the Walt Disney World Railroad, we built a spur track, and Casey Jr. has come off that spur track to this lovely round table and roundhouse, and you are in the 1930s, late 30s, early 40s, and the circus has come to town, and Casey Jr. has unloaded the circus in Fantasyland. And part of that circus, of course, is Dumbo and the Dumbo story. And for the first time, we have dueling Dumbo rides. We have 2 Dumbo rides, not 1 but 2, and also the Big Top. So children can relax and play in a conditioned queue before they experience the Dumbo ride that they know and love. Across the way, Pete's Silly Sideshow. Our friend Pete has recruited talent from all over the world, some of the best sideshows from anywhere, to be part of our circus, including the great Donaldo, the very famous snake charmer from Far East. I think you might imagine we might play him. But this is a chance to meet the great characters in the context of the circus. We've got a little bit of retail. Big Top souvenirs are here so people can experience what it's like to be in the Big Top and get their cotton candy and their apples and things like that. Over here, Goofy is a stunt pilot. He's an air racer, a stunt pilot in the circus, and he, on the Great Goofini, barnstorms his way through an existing barn and around a very huge icon for the area, a big air racing pylon, and you're being able to experience barnstorming with Goofy. In the center of our land, perhaps the most interesting and certainly the piece that is capturing the imagination here at D23 is the Seven Dwarfs Mine Coaster. And this is the story of the Seven Dwarfs, boarding an ore car in the mine, and then moving over the countryside, up this lift and down, before you go back into the mine and experience the dwarfs working in the mine around the countryside. And just mirroring this kinetic energy of the mine train, the kinetic energy of this ride is wonderful, and a wonderful completion of all the great stories that we have in Fantasyland. Don't want to leave Pooh out, because Pooh belongs in the forest, and we have put him in the forest, and if you encounter the park today, you'll see the 100-acre wood and how it embraces the Pooh attraction, and how you can see the Fantasy Forest, the first inklings of the Fantasy Forest coming to be, and you can imagine how that kind of level of detail and that level of planning will bridge the street and really complete the story of the Fantasyland Forest at Fantasyland in the Magic Kingdom.
Could you repeat that? Sorry, I missed. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Top, right?
Yeah, no, clearly a lot involved in New Fantasyland. Out of the whole project to expand Fantasyland, what do you think is going to be a guest favorite? What are the moments in walking through this area that guests are going to be most drawn to?
I think one of the things that's going to surprise them most is this idea of a forest, of emerging from the castle courtyard into this very rich environment in which the topography changes dramatically. We're introducing a lot of interesting architecture that they recognize from the films, a lot of dramatic waterfalls, a lot of dramatic area development, and I think so that change of pace from that castle that everybody knows and loves, that very effective tournament feel that we've come to know from the Magic Kingdom since its opening, and walking through that castle wall and seeing that forest presented for what it is and all those great stories that live in the woods, I think that's going to be striking for a lot of our guests.
Well, in walking through Fantasyland here at Disneyland in California, there's a lot of foliage, but the Magic Kingdom has always been, concrete land, large. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit, but compared to the amount of trees that are in Fantasyland here, but it seems like once this is done, it's going to be a much more natural sort of environment.
Well, we were blessed with a couple of things. Number one, the Anaheim installation, it's on grade. You can plant things quite heavily. It's very interesting, and they've been able to do a great job over the years creating the intimacy that Disneyland is known for. Magic Kingdom, designed for a bigger scale, designed for a lot more attendance, right? And also kind of hamstrung by the development of the utilidor. In some ways, the utilidor are a wonderful tool for circulation and operations, but it prevents that kind of rich planting that you find in Disneyland. We're off the utilidor here. We're able to do dramatic planting and dramatic grade change that wasn't possible in 1971. And so that was really how, when the creative director Chris Beatty and I first got together to conceive this, that was really what we thought about. How can we introduce that kind of intimacy and richness of storytelling in the area development that's missing in this park, right? That we see in Disneyland that we all love, and how can we bring it? Well, we can bring it because we have a site that can deliver it. And so all we did was take advantage of the condition and really play it up.
Yeah, that's excellent. Let me ask you a couple of specific questions about the many things that you just mentioned. Back over here in former Toontown, Storybook Circus.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the sideshow component of that. Is that going to be an attraction of not a ride, but an attraction of sorts?
Yeah, it's an attraction. It's a character meet and greet. Okay. But again, we're developing kind of throughout the expansion. We're developing kind of a little more richer meet and greet experience, and certainly we have other in-depth experiences. Certainly with Belle, a meet and greet like you've never experienced. But the sideshow is actually putting the characters in context of the larger storytelling about the circus. What's more fun than Pete hosting a sideshow? That's pretty funny. Probably Donaldo trying to be a snake charmer. That's probably funnier. But we hope to bring that kind of level of immersion and storytelling just to the typical meet and greet. We also, earlier in the year, we're able to move Mickey to Main Street in Expo Hall. And that storytelling there is that you're meeting him backstage. He's a magician and he performs at Expo Hall. Yeah. And I think the audience response already, the guest response there has been great. And the level of immersions and storytelling and kind of the appropriate nature of that kind of beautiful piece of architecture that wants that kind of storytelling, that wants that richness of finish. I mean, we're happy to be able to pay that off for the guest.
Great, and the Mine Train coaster, there were, of course, all these silly rumors going around, oh, it's canceled, it's not happening, it's this and that, and yet we're standing next to a full-size mock-up of a ride vehicle. Absolutely. And we've seen tests of it and all that. Clearly, it's happening, it's on the model, it's not going away.
We're building it. Yeah.
Well, I hope so, because it looks like a whole lot of fun. Yeah. It seems to be a really neat mixture of dark ride and thrill ride, not super thrilling, it's kind of a mid-grade coaster. Do you think guests will really take to that combination of attractions?
I think they will. I think it's one of these coasters that it's going to be a rite of first passage kind of coaster. Certainly it isn't my first coaster, but I mean it's the kind of coaster that the whole family can enjoy. I think what's innovative about it is not only the storytelling from an external standpoint, being able to walk past the Snow White Cottage, to touch the mine, to be in the mine, to experience all that, but the ride vehicle being so innovative, in the way that it moves like an Aura car. Its free swinging nature actually is going to help us not only tell the story of an Aura car, but also give that little bit of, oh my gosh, are we out of control now?
It's going to add a little extra thrill to the ride. I mean, I'm looking at it over here, and it looks very rocky.
Yeah, it's a little rocky. I mean, not too much, but I mean the actual yoke that you're seeing here that is attached to the wheel and harness assembly on the tracks, that stays fixed. And what happens? It's a pinpoint. You can just see it's being demonstrated now. And based on the weight of the vehicle, like if you're riding with your son or daughter or your friend, this car is going to rock as it moves across the landscape and across the tracks. And each car is going to rock differently because each car is slightly loaded differently. And so as this multi-train vehicle moves across the landscape, it's going to have a kind of an action and a kinetic that we love so much in our parks. It pays off both for the people on the ride and the people on the path. It's that visual kinetic that makes the Magic Kingdom distinct from any other attraction, because we bring so much and work so hard to make those rides pay off both for the viewer but for the rider, right? and that's really the difference, and we're happy to be able to do it.
Great. One more question for you. It's been said this new Fantasyland will open in phases. Do you have any more specific information on what those phases are, when they are?
I can do it. I'm going to give you broad strokes because there's a lot of micro phrases inside of here. But really the first step of the Magic Kingdom expansion, you're already being able to experience, which is building the 100-acre wood against the Pooh facade that's been open for about a year now. And that really, as I said, foreshadows the kind of level of detailing that's to come. The next bit that's going to open early next year will be the Dumbo in its new location, the Barnstormer, the train station, the Fantasyland train station, and Casey Jr. And that will kind of foretell the additional work of the circus that will come about a year later. Late in 12, late next year, the Mermaid attraction, the Village, the Be Our Guest restaurant, the Bell attraction, and the Castle Wall will come up. And so really what we'll have is the whole expansion around the backside over to Fantasyland Station open, with the exception of the coaster, because we're building a new coaster. This is new technology, this is a new ride system. We're going to need some time to get it right. Yeah. So that coaster will follow on probably another year or so later after that.
So guests visiting Magic Kingdom will get a bit of a California adventure experience for a while, with a lot of construction walls.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's going to be a little more forgiving than that. We're going to go to great pains than we currently are now. If you were to visit there today, there's a construction wall right across from Pooh. What's exciting about that construction wall? They're construction walls, but you get to see over them to some of the rock work being finished at the castle at Ariel, some of the rock work being finished at Bell. Beast Castle's already in position in full paint, and I think it's important for guests to see that. There's a lot of activity going inside. I think one of the challenges we'll have in opening that north side of the expansion is how to keep that coaster construction and that level of detail trimmed out and finished out as we're allowing guests to circulate around that construction, because we're really building that coaster on an island in the center of our expansion. So a lot to come.
I look forward to seeing it all evolve over the next couple of years.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
And there you have it. More about new Fantasyland expansion at the Magic Kingdom. In fact, quite a bit of information there. A lot to take in all at once. I think it's good to finally hear an exact timeline. Obviously not exact, no specific dates, but a relative timeline of when all of that is coming to the Magic Kingdom. The order of the progression of everything. It's certainly going to be hopping construction walls here and there. There are plenty of construction walls right now at the Magic Kingdom, and then a bit is going to open up over here. A bit's going to open up over there, and then the final step to it all will be the Mine Train coaster, which will be really exciting once we see it all wrap up in 2013. So I'm going to be posting more about Fantasyland and from this interview and throughout the D23 Expo coming up on the website this week. So head on over to InsideTheMagic.net to check all of that out. I've got one more interview from the D23 Expo to share here. I was actually going to share two interviews, but I think I'm actually going to hold one of them for a future week because it's kind of on a different topic. It's not really even theme park. It's almost not theme park related, so I'll hold that one for the future. But one more that is theme park related that I'm going to share here. We're going to completely move to the other side of the world and head on over to something that not a lot has been released about so far, and that is the Shanghai Disney Resort. Details are quite scarce about this new resort that Disney's building that's not going to open for another few years. Groundbreaking happened recently, but it is certainly still in development. And in talking to an Imagineer named Matt, I unfortunately didn't catch his last name, there in the Parks and Resorts Pavilion at the D23 Expo, I was able to learn a bit more about what is going to be built at Shanghai Disney, really get a sense for what is going on in that project overseas in Shanghai. He, of course, is working on the Shanghai project and was able to shed a bit of light on the Storybook Castle and the whole surrounding area around the castle and even the surrounding area around the park itself. So let's jump back on over to the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts Pavilion at the 2011 D23 Expo to hear a bit about Shanghai Disneyland.
My name's Matt. I'm Associate Facility Designer for Shanghai Disneyland.
Excellent. So, not a whole field about Shanghai Disneyland so far. What can you tell me? What is this model that we're looking at here?
What I can tell you about the model is that it's a model of our whole resort. It's approximately 1,000 acres. And what we're showing here is a Magic Kingdom style theme park, as well as 2 hotels and a downtown Disney style experience, similar to what we have here in Anaheim. So we just broke ground back in April of 2011, and we're scheduled to open in approximately 5 years.
So it's quite a long development time, and I'm sure it's been in concept work for a long time as well. When we were at the presentations recently in the last couple of days, we've gotten a pretty good look at Storybook Castle. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
What we have featured at the heart of our park is the Enchanted Storybook Castle, and that's going to be home to all of the Disney princesses. And we are featuring a number of different interactive activities such as Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. There's also going to be a walkthrough as well as a boat ride inside the castle, and retail and dining. So there's a lot of fun to be had inside this castle.
Now, in hearing about Shanghai, I understand that it's not exactly set up in the same manner as every other Magic Kingdom style park. There's some differences in the hub structure and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The way we are approaching the design is that we are utilizing classic Disney storytelling techniques, but we are tailoring them to the Chinese culture and the Chinese people. And so what that means is that the park will be authentically Disney, but distinctly Chinese. And so one of the ways we're trying to integrate that into the design is through the use of waterways and as well as lush gardens throughout the whole theme park.
But as far as the land surrounding the castle, all of that is very much, is it still in the works? Is that why you haven't announced anything?
It's all still very much in blue sky, so we're all still working very hard up at Imagineering to create those lands to make it a much richer experience.
And with it so many years out, it's just in development, and we'll see more and more as the years come.
Yeah, so there's a lot of magic to look forward to in the next couple of years.
And there you have it, straight from one of the Imagineers working on Shanghai Disney Resort. A little bit more information. Disney's real hesitant to say too much about what they're working on because it is, as he said, very much in blue sky at this point, which basically means anything could happen, anything could change. It seems like Shanghai is going to be one of the most unique Magic Kingdom style parks, if not the most unique, with just the way the castle is set up. It's going to be the biggest Disney castle that they have ever constructed, multiple levels with multiple attractions really inside, not only just shopping and dining and Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, but also a ride and a walkthrough and plenty to see in there. And then in the surrounding area, there'll be gardens and waterways, and just a change from that same hub and spoke structure that has really been the heart of all of these styles of parks. And as he said, it's going to be distinctly Chinese at the same time as being Disney, which is really, really interesting. It'll be fun to watch that park develop. I know it's something that many of you out there listening and watching, it's something you probably won't visit anytime soon. Well, obviously once it opens, it's a few years from opening, but quite a ways away from opening and being seen. And I mean, I've never been to any of the overseas parks, so imagine how long it's going to take for me to get out to Shanghai. But maybe I'll just do one big whirlwind trip to Tokyo and Paris and Shanghai and Hong Kong and just see it all. And well, I don't know if that's going to happen. It sure would be nice though, because it does sound like it's going to be a really exciting, a different sort of park and quite the experience. So a lot of fun there. Now, as I have said, you can head on over to insidethemagic.net/D23 Expo to find out more from both of those interviews I'm going to post independently over on the website. If not today, then tomorrow, along with a few extra details and some photos. But in addition to that, I've posted plenty more videos and hundreds of photos and lots more articles to come from the D23 Expo. So you're going to want to head over to the website for all of that in our ongoing coverage of the biggest Disney event of the year, the ultimate Disney fan gathering that is the 2011 D23 Expo. But that is not the only exciting thing that has been going on in recent weeks. Of course, earlier I mentioned that tomorrow, August 29th, is going to be the first day that guests will officially be checking in for Disney's newest resort. It is Aulani out in Hawaii. It's in Ko'olina, which is the west side on the west side of Oahu. It's about an hour's drive from Waikiki. They broke ground on it a few years ago, back in November 2008, and Aulani is opening tomorrow. It is both vacation club and hotel. There's a split between the two, and it's going to open in phases, so not 100% of it is going to be open and available quite yet. But with it opening, I, of course, couldn't let this week go by without talking a bit about it, even though I haven't been there. Of course, I'm not in Hawaii. I'm here in Orlando. Nothing to complain about there, but I wouldn't mind being there right now, and I hope to be at Aulani at some point in the future. But for now, since I am not there, I can't personally tell you about it. However, I do have somebody else, actually a few somebody's else's that can tell you all about it. Some very important people that have been involved with the project as well. So what I want to share for you here is take you back a few weeks, back to June, when I sat down with 3 people who know all about Aulani, and they are Joe Rohde, as a name you should probably know. He's an Imagineer, Senior Creative Executive for Walt Disney Imagineering, as well as Jeanette Lomboy, Senior Show Producer for Walt Disney Imagineering, and now this name, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'm probably going to butcher it, and I apologize for that. It's spelled D-J-U-A-N. Djuan, perhaps, Rivers. He is the Vice President for Disney Vacation Club and Resort in Hawaii. Certainly no small title there, so I apologize for not pronouncing his name, but regardless, you'll be able to hear from all 3 of them in just a minute here to learn a bit more about what Aulani is all about. And the question that was really on my mind about Aulani, and I think a lot of people are wondering, is what does it mean to go to Hawaii and have a Disney experience? I mean, are you going to get to Hawaii and you're going to be overwhelmed by Mickey Mouse and that kind of thing, or is it going to be real subtle? You know, what variation of Disney as a concept is going to be there? And that's one of the things that I asked them. But first, in talking to them, we're actually going to hear about what the first thing is that you'll experience, that you'll see, that you'll take in upon stepping foot into this new Disney resort in Hawaii. What's the first thing that will strike you when you get to the entrance of Aulani? And then after that, we'll hear the answer to my other question, and then I'll be back to talk a little bit more about this new Disney resort that's opening tomorrow.
First of all, I think this impression of grandeur, majestation, story, boom. It's people, you know, there's this image of Hawaii, this kind of shambling, grass shacky, you know, beachy thing that is actually not very Hawaiian. The culture of Hawaii is tremendously elegant and has this deep sense of tradition. We want that to be the impression. You walk into that space, there are these huge, what are called in Hawaiian ki'i. They're like tikis. But they won't be, you know, kitsch tikis. These are beautiful works of modern art by one of the preeminent sculptors of Hawaii, working today in the tradition of his ancestors. They're 12 feet tall. They're on either side of that space. There's this beautiful mural that surrounds the entire space that depicts the idea of the continuity of Hawaiian culture. There's these, there's just art everywhere. Art, I think, is what you're going to come away thinking. You've walked into this palace of art, and you look straight out to the ocean. I mean, there's a jungle and an ocean straight out off that balcony.
But there's also Disney magic too. I mean, listen, this is about the Hawaiian culture. The one piece that I always like, you know, what's the Disney presence in the room? It is creating an immersive environment that's about story. But we also have this compass rose that's at the center of the floor. And you know, this is so indicative, right? I think what's really important, that if we did distill it down, it's like someone once told me, look twice, think 3 times. That's the entire Hawaiian culture. So when you walk into the space, you will be wowed. You will think this is beautiful, this is grand, this is formal. The second time you look at it, you might start to pick out details that make up the story. So the mural, the ki'i, the compass rose on the floor, right? The third time, you start asking questions. Why, right? That's where the wonder, that's where the magic, that's where the knowledge, that's where all of it lives. So the third take, right? The entire resort is designed this way. So the very center of this floor is a compass rose. And people will walk by and think, wow, this is really beautiful. There's a bird at the center of the floor. I see all these sparkling stars that are shining through the lava rock and coming out at me. What does this all mean, right? And I could go on for 10 minutes about what that means, but the point is, A, sense of wonder and beauty. Second, thinking about what you're seeing, and third, asking the questions, right? And that's where the magic lives. And opening your eyes, right? Opening your eyes. It is completely about looking in the shadows. It's about a certain time of day. It's about, you know, something catching your eye that happens magically behind you. You have to open your eyes at this resort, and that's what the lobby is. In fact, it's called Maka'ala, which is open your eyes, be alert, be awake.
And you'll walk in this. What you've heard may seem like this sense of overwhelming activity happening, but there's a sense of relaxation.
Oh, yeah.
The word Hawaii starts with ha, the breath of life. You walk in and you just breathe. There's a sense of, I have been transported. I'm in this new place, and the visual continuity of everything that you see makes you go, this is incredible, because it's all sort of like there, and you are now a part of this experience?
I think that's an important point because a lot of people are coming to Hawaii and they're expecting beautiful beach, relaxing time on the sand with their family, and they're going to get that. But they're also going to get more, and a lot more. And if they keep looking and they want more, there's even more and more than that. And Aulani is just a home base for the Hawaiian culture. Though the focus is the Hawaiian culture of our story, we're not asking people to stay. We want them to look around and to continue their relationship with the place and with the Hawaiian culture and with Hawaii by going out and exploring the island. I mean, we have a rich excursions program too that supports what we're doing in Aulani too, to build a relationship and not, if they want to, it's all there.
Traveling right with that thought, in somebody who's planning a vacation, they're thinking, well, I can go to a Disney theme park, I know what that is. I can go to Hawaii, I know what that is. Putting the two together, how do you explain that to somebody? What does that mean to have Disney in Hawaii?
Okay, so a couple things first. Disney is two things. Disney is the subjects we treat with. There's a lot of intellectual property we own that we created, that we made, right? There's also an entire pattern of behavior, how we do things, that is also Disney. That's the Disney that's going to Hawaii. The subject matter, the intellectual property, that's all over the place. This story is Hawaii. Disney in Hawaii is our pattern of behavior, our way of telling a story, our way of dealing with people, our way of making a place in Hawaii. That's Disney in Hawaii. That having been said, there's more to be said.
Personally, to me, I think it's really simple, and you distill it down to three things, right? When we did all of our research and studied what the Hawaiian culture is, it's three things, really. It's about mo'olelo, which is story. They are the most fantastic storytellers in the world. They are a culture that has passed all their history down through storytelling. They're about ohana, which is family, right? And then, of course, we just talked about this little subtle layer of magic. The magic exists in the everyday in the culture. The way the waves move, the way the wind blows, all of those things magic. So we've got storytelling, we've got family, we've got magic. And guess what? That's what Disney is, right? So it's a perfect marriage, actually, for us. And we don't have to compromise anything. We can live in the same space. And I always say that the way to think about it is we are the best possible blank canvas. That's what Aulani is. The Hawaiian culture, the art, the subject matter experts, and all of their knowledge is the paint that makes the masterpiece, right? And these two things can live together in a way that I think makes sense.
So there you have it. As I said, I am not the right person to be talking about Aulani because I have not been there in person. However, they certainly know what they're talking about, as they are those in charge of developing the project for so many years now. And it's such a beautiful place from what I have seen in the videos and the photos. And what I can tell you a little bit more about it, as it's celebrating its grand opening this week. Well, official opening. I won't say grand opening because technically the grand opening of sorts is going to happen later in September, but the official opening, welcoming the first official guests, is this week to Aulani. And some basic facts about Aulani, if you don't know them already. Obviously, I'd say 99.9% of anybody listening or watching this show have not been to Aulani. There's 21 acres that Aulani actually encompasses. It's going to feature, ultimately, when it's done with all the phases, it's going to feature 460 vacation club villas, including 21 grand villas. It'll also have 359 hotel rooms, including 16 suites. You don't have to be DVC in order to go there. There's 4 restaurants, 2 lounges, 10 recreation facilities, which of course means spa and pools, and quite the elaborate pools that are being featured throughout this area. Of course, you're in Hawaii. One of the things you're going to be expecting to do when you go there is get in the water. So there's no shortage of that. There's actually an 18,000 square foot spa with 15 treatment rooms and a fitness center there, as well as 4 whirlpool spas. Conference centers almost 15,000 square feet, and there's about 37,000, just under 37,000 square feet of outdoor venues. So a lot of space. 2 main towers of Aulani are there with a big center courtyard and main lobby in the middle. And the most important point that they just emphasize over and over every time I talk to anybody about Aulani is this concept of Disney being in Aulani does not mean, like I was saying, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and everything. While I'm sure all of that element will be there, it's more about the Hawaiian culture and really experiencing everything that is best about that Hawaiian culture, but through the magic of Disney and the way that Disney is able to tell a story, whether it's Disney's own story or the story of the Hawaiian culture. Disney is a great storyteller and knows how to put all of the detail and the wonderful elements and the everything that you see and feel while you're there, and that is what Aulani seems to be all about. I can't speak personally as to whether that has come across, but from what I've seen in the photos and videos, it seems to be just as good as you can imagine. Now, what about cost? Of course, like any Disney hotel, costs vary over time, and as far as the vacation club goes, they're actually working on that right now. They have suspended timeshare sales for Aulani as a result of some issues that they've been having. We've been talking about that the last couple of weeks. Of course, Vacation Club president, along with a couple other executives, were let go in the last few weeks. Somebody else was brought on as the new Vacation Club head, and that's as a result of the dues for buying into Aulani not being calculated properly. Anybody who bought in initially, the dues that they were told that they would be paying on an annual basis were not going to be enough for Disney to be able to essentially keep the resort running, and that's what those dues go toward. And as a result, there were people let go from the Walt Disney Company, and now Disney is working on fixing that. And of course, in the meantime, Disney can't sign any new contracts, can't promise any new amounts to purchase into the Vacation Club side of Aulani until they're able to correctly identify how much those dues need to be in order for Aulani to be a success for them. So in the meantime, the hotel portion is going to be up in action as of this week, and Vacation Club is a little bit up in the air at this point. Now, with all of that said, how much will it be for hotel rooms at Aulani? Well, it's going to range, of course. There are different seasons. Prices will go up and down just like any other, but approximately, we'll give you an example of about $400 a night for a 420 square foot room. That's about the lowest you might, there'll be discounts, of course, here and there, maybe annual pass holder, maybe Vacation Club discounts for hotel rooms. You never know. Disney will find their vacation packages over time, but $400 is a good approximation for a 420 square foot room. That can range upward to $2,500 or $2,450 a night for one of the suites. That's 2 bedrooms and roughly 1,900 square feet. If you want an ocean view, which of course, if you're traveling all the way to Hawaii, I personally would want an ocean view. I mean, that's one of the best things about going there, I would think. That one's going to cost you about $550 a night, which apparently is rather comparable to other Hawaiian hotel rooms. Of course, there's going to be cheaper ones, there's going to be more expensive ones, but if you look at the same type of room with the same type of view in the same sort of area, overlooking, the same sort of thing, then $550 a night is about what you can expect to pay, apparently. Having never been there, I couldn't say one way or the other, but this is what I have read, and, it's a lot. Certainly, if you come out here to Walt Disney World and you're looking for a nice room, and if you were willing to pay $400 to $550 a night, you're going to get a really, really nice room. In fact, one of the nicest, not the suite level, but some of the best rooms out here at Walt Disney World. You'll find actually less than that range. You'll find some really nice rooms for that. Likewise out in California. But this is Hawaii, and that's not Walt Disney World. It's not Disneyland. Disney is moving into somewhere else with an existing culture, an existing draw for tourists to show up for a specific reason, and that is why the cost is rather pricey. So, it ends up being whether or not, number one, is a Hawaiian vacation in your future? Is that where you want to go? And number two, do you want the Disney experience to be out of that? For me, with Aulani opening up this week, I would be quite tempted, actually. In my first time traveling to Hawaii, I'd be very, very tempted to make it a Disney vacation as well. I wouldn't be in there expecting a theme park experience because that's not what it is. You're not going to find rides. I would not be expecting, a whole lot of character, this and that. What I would be expecting, however, is the Disney quality. What I have come to expect out of the Walt Disney Company when staying at a hotel, the level of service, the level of comfort, and the level of attentiveness from their staff, and just the overall cleanliness and the food and just everything there. That is what I would expect out of Aulani, and for that price, I would certainly hope so. So someday, I look forward to bringing you a first-hand review of Aulani, but that's about the information that I'm going to share this week. Of course, there is much more to Aulani than what I have just said. In fact, there's a whole lot more, and as Aulani opens this week, I expect to get more in from the resort, more actual photos from within and throughout, and I'll be sharing that probably in an article this week as well. So head on over to InsideTheMagic.net. Of course, I had also posted that interview that you just heard was back from June when I was out at Disneyland, and just before that was the big What's Next presentation for the media, in which Joe Rohde did get up in front of everybody who was in attendance there and talked extensively about everything that was going into Aulani, and that's something I posted over at InsideTheMagic.net several weeks ago. It's about a 15 minute or so talk from Joe Rohde just detailing everything that is in Aulani. So if you're interested in finding out more about what this new resort is all about, head on over to InsideTheMagic.net and you'll find that old article as well as some new ones that I'll be working on to post this week. And aloha, everyone.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Ricky, this is amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Inside the Magic listener feedback.
Okay, so last week, of course, the very, very long show all about the D23 Expo. I did not share any listener feedback, and so now I've got a bit of a backlog to get through here. Actually, not too many, maybe, I don't know, 10 or so emails. We'll see how many we can get through. We're at about an hour and 10 into the show here, so I'll just talk until I'm ready to stop. So let's jump right into the email now. First up from Craig, who writes, hey, Ricky, got a quick question for you. I'm getting ready to make my first visit to Disneyland in 6 weeks for my honeymoon. In your opinion, what's the best mode of transportation from LAX to the Disneyland Resort and vice versa? Thanks for the advice. A great question there, Craig, and congratulations on your wedding and your honeymoon and all of that sort of thing. When I travel out to California, actually, I've done many different forms of transportation between LAX and Disneyland. I've done private car, I've done super shuttle, I've done a bus, and I've done renting a car as well. So in my opinion, the bus option is the best. It's quite on time and it is quite affordable. About $15 a person. It's the most similar you're going to find to the Magical Express option out here in Orlando. It's not a Disney specific thing like Magical Express is, but it's as close as you're going to get. You basically can book in advance online. Sometimes you can find a discount for $1 or $2 off. And you show up to the bus area at LAX, you hop on, you give them your luggage, and next thing you know it, you're at Disneyland. It's pretty painless. Very smooth. I've never had an issue with it. You do have to wait, of course, for the bus to show up, both at LAX and at Disneyland, depending on which direction you're going. Now, with that said, you're going for your honeymoon, and a bus is not exactly the most romantic option. So, of course, there are other options available depending on how much you want to spend. You hire a town car or something like that. Of course, that's going to cost you $100 plus, but that will definitely be a more honeymoon type of option. So that ultimately is up to you. But for me, for your average visit to Disneyland, the bus option is definitely the way to go. There is one line of buses. I think it's the gray line of buses that travels between LAX and all of the Disneyland hotels in the surrounding area. So that's what you should look into in my opinion. Next up, here's an email from Lee or Leah. Leha, who writes, I agree with you. This is dating back to, a conversation we had quite some time ago. She writes, I agree with you and Skipper Ben that losing Virgin Megastore in downtown Disney was a very sad thing. I went there all the time when I was on the college program in 2002. And in fact, I was there so much that it inspired me to write and record my own music during the college program. Here I am 9 years later, and I'm still writing and recording music. In fact, my entire life now revolves around it. Because of this, Virgin Megastore will always be greatly missed by me. Great story there. I definitely didn't have quite the personal connection to that store other than just kind of hanging out, as Ben obviously did many times, as well as spotting Michael Jackson there, I think he had said in one story. But it sounds like your connection to that store was much greater, and now the latest for that location is going to be Splitsville moving in, which Ben seemed pretty excited about. He seemed to have a fun time in Splitsville when it was there in Texas. And it'll probably be something that'll be be enjoyable. But Virgin Megastore, definitely long time gone, and it will live fondly in my memories of traveling to Walt Disney World. It was always part of my vacation. And speaking of Skipper Ben, I think I forgot to mention this in the last few weeks. He obviously has not been on the show, and that's because he just recently had a second kid. So congratulations to Ben and Lisa. I swear I meant to mention this, and I apologize if I didn't mention it on the show in the last few weeks. That is why he hasn't been on the show. He's obviously got his hands full, not only with the kid that you've been hearing growing up on the last, year or two or however long it's been, but now he's got a second little one, another little girl on their hands. So congratulations to them for that, and eventually we'll get Ben and Lisa back here on the show once things calm down around their household. Next up, an email from Redman from Massachusetts, who writes, do you know offhand which months are the best weather-wise and crowd-wise to visit Disneyland? Well, in my opinion, Redman, almost any month is a good time to visit Disneyland weather-wise. Out here in Florida, I would say avoid the summer at all costs because it's so hot and rainy and humid and all of that kind of thing. But out in California, it is beautiful, almost year-round out there. There's almost not a bad time to visit the Los Angeles/Anaheim area. As far as crowds, of course, the summer season's going to be busy, the Christmas season's going to be busy-er, but because there are so many locals out in California, it's almost always busy at Disneyland lately. It's been getting very busy very often, especially on Fridays and Saturdays and the weekends and that kind of thing. You're not really going to find an unbusy time so much at Disneyland anymore. Whether it's almost like a just go when it's most convenient for you. Try to avoid the summer. Try to avoid Christmas time and maybe spring break time. Just any holiday, anything where kids are off from school. That's not the time you want to go, but any other time of the year, you should be pretty good to go. Next, an email from John, who writes, after our last visit to Walt Disney World, my boys asked to see the parks again online. I had conducted several web searches, but no active sites. I found old links to Disney pages that were gone. The closest I ever found was a Howard Johnson's webcam outside Disneyland. Have you ever heard why there are no live webcams anymore? John, that's a question that gets asked quite often. There used to be some great webcams for the parks and around the parks, and you're right, only some surrounding area hotels seem to show the parks off at all anymore. And I know Downtown Disney Characters in Flight Balloon just recently, if not it may have been this week or last week, posted a webcam where you can kind of get a view of the balloon status out here in Orlando. But other than that, as far as why there are no webcams in the parks, that I couldn't say for sure. I'm going to go ahead and guess it's a security reason, but I can't tell you for sure one way or the other. It is unfortunate because those were fun to watch. Of course, there are a lot of unofficial live cameras, and that with iPhones and Ustream and other applications like that, a lot of people are taking their phones and laptops and that kind of thing into the parks and doing some live video from there. But that's not official, and it's not necessarily on a regular schedule or anything like that. So probably not necessarily an option that you can always count on. But so I really don't have an answer for you, is what I'm trying to say. I know a lot of people would like to see those webcams return as well. Here's an amusing email from Zach, who writes, I love your show so much. I look for updates all the time and find the best out of your site. I know that Inside the Magic has a Facebook page, but I think you should have a Facebook fan page called the Ricky Briganti Official Fan Page. Not sure about that, Zach. Thanks very much for the compliments. I'm glad you enjoy Inside the Magic. I don't know that I personally need a fan site. If anyone out there wants to create your own, whatever you can do if you want to. But no, I don't think I personally need a fan site. I would just recommend everybody just click the little like button for Inside the Magic on Facebook. It's at facebook.com/Inside the Magic. That'll be good enough. It's me who posts on there all the time anyway, so it's essentially the same thing. But thanks for that suggestion. Next up, an email from Dave who writes, I just wanted to give you a quick update on the LG Thrill. This is Dave from digitaldisneyworld.com that wrote in a few weeks ago about a new 3D-capable phone that was coming out. Dave writes, I left you the voicemail, which you played recently. Apparently, there was a delay with the Thrill. It did not come out on the 7th, but however, the release date was August 21st, and your 3D pictures looked great on it. So Dave, thanks for that update. It sounds like the LG Thrill should be out now. If anyone wants to browse themeparksin3d.com and you don't have a 3DS or one of those Fuji cameras or one of the, I think it's an HTC phone that does 3D, this LG Thrill sounds like a good way to do it. And I'm actually going to be updating themeparksin3d.com very soon with some 3D photos from the D23 Expo, and then somebody emailed in or sent over some 3D pictures from Knott's Berry Farm out in California as well. So I'll add that park to the growing list of 3D fun. It's it's a good way to experience a little bit of extra depth, if you pardon the pun, on pictures of theme parks online. Next up, email from Patrick, who writes, this may seem out of the blue, but I was wondering if you might be able to help me out. My girlfriend Miriam is probably your Disney podcast biggest fan. And he goes on and basically wants to shout out, Miriam, hi, how are you? I don't mind saying that because I met Miriam. She was a listener who said hi, I don't know, a few months ago when Ben was actually out here in Orlando. So it was nice meeting you then, and Patrick wanted me to say hi to you, so that is what I'm doing right now. Moving on, this email is from many people, actually. It's from David, Susan, Justin, and Kirsten. And all of them collectively write, we wanted to say a big shout out and thank you for all of your podcasts over the years. We leave for Disney World on the 8th of September for a month in Orlando, and we can't wait. It'll be a 26-hour flight from Australia, but it'll be worth it. We discovered your podcast early this year and started our countdown from 200 days, having listened to them every week, getting info, tips, and news so we can plan our time at the parks. And we've learned so much from all the info that you share. One of the many things that we're doing when we get there is the Wild Africa Trek in Animal Kingdom. Do you have any tips to make the most out of this? So again, good day from Sydney, and thank you. Looking forward to getting to Orlando in a couple of weeks. Well, David, Susan, Justin, and Kirsten, sounds like you've got a really amazing vacation coming up out here to Walt Disney World. To spend a month out here should be pretty exciting, and you picked a great time to do it. After the Labor Day holiday, you should find the crowds being quite agreeable around the parks. As far as the Wild Africa Trek that you're asking about, tips. Well, I would say number one, don't bury yourself in a camera the whole time. I know you're not even really supposed to bring stuff with you unless it's tethered to you, so make sure if you do bring anything, have a tether, be it a small camera or anything like that. Otherwise, it's going to have to be stored in a locker. So make sure of that. As far as other tips, other than not looking through a viewfinder the whole time, I don't really have many because it's a pretty self-explanatory adventure. It is really exciting. I enjoyed it thoroughly when I did it, and a little bit of changes have been made since I had a chance to do it. Now you don't get all of your PhotoPass photos on a CD anymore. You only get your photos from the Wild Africa Trek, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's still a very entertaining experience, certainly unlike most of anything else you'll do at Walt Disney World, and I know you'll enjoy it, and just have fun. Go with it. Try everything. Don't be too scared to lean over the edge when you're tethered to the thing and look down at the hippos and that kind of thing. It's all very safe, and you're tethered very well, and just go for it. You're there to have an adventure. It is a Wild Africa Trek, and don't hold back. It's really supposed to be an out and active experience. So really, and you being from Australia, I would assume you're used to that sort of thing. Of course, that's a big assumption for an entire country worth of people. But I'll just go ahead and assume that everybody in Australia is like Steve Irwin was, and you're adventurous. So, based on that, you're going to have a good time. Next, an email from Kellen, who writes, I have a question about planning an upcoming trip to Walt Disney World. Me and some friends are planning to celebrate our last summer break together by heading out to the park sometime in fall. We were hoping to go near the end of September, and we're wondering if this is a good time to visit. Are the crowds lighter around that time, or would it be better to wait until later in the year? Also, I'm wondering if most of the attractions are open, or if they consider this time of the year the time for refurbishment. Well, Kellen, like I was saying earlier, for a couple other people who wrote in with with similar questions, September is a very good time to come. Toward the end of September is a great time. The weather starts to get some relief from the summer months-ish, sort of. I mean, it's been pretty hot, and I imagine September will continue to be somewhat hot as well, but you should see some relief from that, and the crowds as well. After Labor Day, they start to thin out a bit, although Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party begins to pick up more and more of the crowds as it gets closer and closer to Halloween. Of course, Halloween Party starts in just a couple of weeks from now at this point, but I wouldn't worry too much. It should be a pretty good time for you to come. And as far as attractions, best way to check that is just to go to the official Walt Disney World calendar. You can check all 4 parks, and all of the refurbishments are listed there online at DisneyWorld.com. So I wouldn't say this time of year is different than really any other time of year. There's always refurbishments going on for this or that, and that'll be your best chance to figure that out. Next, an email from Jeremy, who writes, we're planning a trip to Walt Disney World in May of 2012, and wanted your opinion on which resort to choose. We would like to stay at one of the monorail resorts, so between the Polynesian and the Contemporary. I've stayed at the Polynesian before, and I remember loving it as a child. I've heard great things about the Contemporary too, and the Grand Floridian would be the choice if money were a no object. So you weigh in on the choice between the Polynesian versus the Contemporary. We will be a party of 4, 2 young adult couples, for 5 or 6 nights. Jeremy, a good choice to have to make. 2 excellent hotels there. Both the rooms at the Contemporary and the Polynesian have relatively recently been upgraded and updated, and new furniture and fixtures and all of that kind of thing. In my personal opinion, going with the theme of Aulani and the Hawaiian feel and all of that, the Polynesian I like better than the Contemporary. Contemporary's got a lot of really great things going for it, and the rooms, of course, are now once again contemporary. A few years ago, they were kind of stuck in the 80s, but now they are once again contemporary and very comfortable, and it's got some really excellent features throughout the big A-frame area. But unless you're willing to pay to stay in that A-frame area, you're going to be kind of stuck over in one of the side buildings, which is not nearly as fun when you're staying at the Contemporary. Whereas in the Polynesian, everywhere is great to stay. I think I've stayed at the Polynesian more times than any other Walt Disney World hotel, because I really enjoy it. It is definitely the one I would recommend out of the 2. And of course, you can go get your Dole Whips, giant-sized self-serve, soft-serve over at the restaurant there. While you're staying there, just walk over and grab those. You can go to Ohana, which is a fantastic place to eat. And after you're stuffed from there, you can just stumble back to your room. And as far as riding the monorail as well, heading into the Magic Kingdom, Polynesian's good because it goes in that direction, but heading out, it's nice to be able to hit the Contemporary on the first stop on the resort line of the monorail, and also you have the option to walking over at the Contemporary, which is nice from the Magic Kingdom. But either way, Polynesian would be my recommendation. Next email, let's see, where did it go? There it is from Steve, who writes, I just discovered and implemented this tip last night. This is sort of a tip/email, and also related to wet weather and that kind of thing, which we were talking about a bit earlier. Anyway, Steve continues, after a torrential downpour we had here in the parks, we had ponchos to somewhat spare our clothes from the rain. We were quickly walking through some unavoidably large and very deep puddles, and by the time we got to the front gate, our tennis shoes were completely soaked. I have special shoes to help my feet, so going in flip-flops the next day was not an option, and my shoes were so waterlogged that I thought there was no possible way they could dry overnight. However, someone suggested crumpling up a bunch of newspaper and stuffing the shoes tightly, and by morning they'd be dry. I dubiously tried this last night, and this morning, lo and behold, it worked. My shoes are dry and ready to go. Please pass this on as a way to deal with those unexpected Florida rainfalls. Very interesting, Steve. I've never heard that before. I have certainly come out of the parks after running through a torrential downpour, and my shoes were soaked, and I made the mistake of throwing them in going to the hotel, and this was years ago, throwing them in the laundry facility, the dryer, and that doesn't really work. The rubber kind of gets all hot, and it's just kind of a mess, but interesting. Stuffing newspaper in the shoe. I never would have gathered that, and you can probably grab a newspaper from any old little coin-operated thing, grab a copy of the Orlando Sentinel or something, and shove it in the shoe, and there you go. So good. Thanks very much for that email. Okay, I've got one more email, and while we're on a roll here, if anybody in the chat room, of which there are many of you actively chatting, if any of you have a question, go ahead and fire away, and I'll answer a couple of more here at the end of the show after I read this email from Megan, who writes, I've been listening to your show ever since episode 10 and look forward to it every week. This past week, someone else wrote in with a question that I've always wondered about. Why do you cover every event at Walt Disney World in detail, but yet barely even mention Marathon Weekend or other Run Disney events? I really think you should reconsider including information about it on the show. About 3.5 years ago, I decided to lose some weight using Weight Watchers and exercise. Right around the same time, another Disney podcast discussed Marathon Weekend, and as soon as I realized that there was a half marathon in Disney, I decided I had to do it. I started running and watching my diet and quickly lost 30 pounds. My goal of running the Disney Half Marathon kept me going. I ran the Disney Half Marathon in 2010, my second half ever, and then returned to do the full marathon in 2011, my second full. I am hoping to do the Goofy, the half and full, in the same weekend in 2013. I understand that you may not be into running, however, other people may be interested in learning about it. Disney has a slow time requirement of a 16-minute mile, and this means that many people can run/walk the events and still finish. This also gives runners time to stop along the race course and have their picture taken with numerous characters along the way. There are also kids' races and a 5K race for people who aren't quite ready for a longer distance, and there's a lot of great events during this weekend, such as a pasta party and special hard ticket event at Hollywood Studios with fireworks. I think if you went to the Race Expo, saw the race start, and watched the runners as they run through the castle and cheered at the finish line, you'd have a great time without even having to run. You could also interview some runners and make a whole show about Marathon Weekend. This could inspire some more people to become healthier and start running. Well, Megan, thanks very much for that. In my mind, when I think of a race, I think of it's a bunch of people running. Not sure what else to say. What else could I possibly cover and talk about it here on the show? But clearly, based on what you just said, there is much more to a Disney race than just a bunch of people running their way through. There's a lot of, opportunities for photos and great moments like running through the castle and excitement. And then, as you said, some special parties as well. And you're right, that probably would be worth covering at some point. So I'll keep an eye out. I'll keep an ear out and see in the future what I could do to add the many Walt Disney World races to the list of things that we cover here on the show. So thanks very much for that email. So as I said just a minute ago, I want to open it up to the chat room here for a few extra questions here at the end. So let me scroll up as many things have happened since I said that, and see if I can pull some questions out here out of the chat room. So just reading along here. Sorry for the silent here. You know what? Listen to the music while I read the chat room and I pick out some questions to include here. Okay, so here is a question from, the chat room keeps moving, making it very difficult to read anything. Let's see, it looks like his name is Walter, who says, if you choose a Disney park to go outside the U.S., which one would it be? As I said earlier, I haven't been to any of the overseas parks yet, and so which one will I choose for whenever it is time? Michelle really, really wants to go to Disneyland Paris, so I have a feeling that'll be the one that we ultimately choose as the first. I am really eager to see Tokyo Disney Sea. It's something that I've seen just a few, some pictures of and this and that, and it seems like just a gorgeous, gorgeous park, and it's very different than anything else I've been to, but at the same time, Disneyland Paris certainly is not something I'm opposed to whatsoever, so I'm going to go ahead and guess that Paris would be the first destination. Plus, I've never even been to Europe, so there's a number of other European stops that I'd want to make in the same trip and just make a whole adventure of it. Eric in the chat room asks if I think the expo will stay in California, the D23 Expo. Yes, I do, at least for now. The original plan for the D23 Expo was for it to be every year and to stay in California for about 5 years and then potentially move to Walt Disney World. Well, that changed after the first expo. They decided to make it every other year for an expo and then do Destination D events in the meantime. And it seems like the next one is going to be once again in Anaheim in 2013, though the details of that have not yet been finalized or confirmed or released or anything like that. So we'll just have to wait and see. But in my opinion, I think California is a good place for the expo to be, because it's tough to get that level of and number of celebrities out here to Orlando. Certainly it's not impossible, but to have all of those celebrities appear, especially for the Walt Disney Studios presentation, is much, much easier for it to happen in California. Let's see, a couple of more questions from the chat room here before we round out the show. Mike asks what I hope will be for the 40th anniversary. You know, there have been rumors in the last few days of Walt Disney World doing something for its upcoming 40th anniversary, which is just over a month from now. It'll be October 1st will be the date for that. And Disney hasn't announced any specific celebrations or anything of the sort, special events to commemorate that date yet. I would love to see something at the Magic Kingdom personally. Of course, you know, that's the park that really started it all out here at Walt Disney World, in addition to some hotels. And I think, a hard-ticketed after-hours 40th anniversary event right there in the park would be a whole lot of fun. There's a lot of events where you go to a hotel and you sit in a conference room and you watch some people talk about the history of this and that, and those are very entertaining and I enjoy them. But at the same time, I think it's more about experiencing the park itself and have some sort of party, after-hours party, just celebrating what the 40 years of it, and really having some sort of live entertainment and certain places you could go and activities you could do that are related to 40 years of Walt Disney World. That's the kind of event that I would have a whole lot of fun. Of course, the night before that, I'm pretty sure it's the night before that, is the Haunted Mansion event, the Room for One More event that technically is 40 years of the Haunted Mansion out here as well. And I will be going to that, but that's specifically Haunted Mansion and not all of Walt Disney World. So I would like to see something more than just merchandise coming out of the 40th anniversary for Walt Disney World. Even if there is an event, I hope it's not specifically a merchandise event if they decide to put something together. All right, let's see. Back to the chat room. Big D in the chat room asks, will we ever see the old chicken strips, Ricky? I certainly hope so. I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen, but, I'll have to wait and see. I've heard that it's here, it's there, it's on the cruise line, it's over at this hotel, it's this and that. I've never found the official old Disney chicken strips that I loved. So who knows if those, I have a feeling we'll never see them again, which would not be fun. Kathy wants to know if I'm going to be sharing audio from the Disney Legends on a later show about the speeches and all of that. Well, much of it is available over on the website, but not all of it yet. Unfortunately, I didn't video all of the speeches. I did record audio of all of them, and yes, I will share that at some point in a future podcast, so everybody can enjoy all of that there was to enjoy for the D23 Expo Legends ceremony this year, which was highly, highly entertaining. I just saw a question about Connect Disneyland Adventures go flying by, and I can't find who asked it. So whoever asked that question, let me answer it for you. You asked if the input on Connect Disneyland Adventures had a lot of lag, and in my I'm going to do a bigger review, a more in-depth review about the whole experience of playing Disneyland Adventures at the D23 Expo soon over on the website. But in short, yes, I was not, and it was Mike apparently who asked the question. Okay, I was not thrilled by the controls. The Microsoft rep that I was there with the demo at the D23 Expo said the controls were still in the works a bit, that they were still being tweaked, and it seemed to me like they needed some tweaking. It was really awkward to play. I was not necessarily having fun while playing. Visually, a great game. Actual gameplay was all over the place. She seemed to be able to do it very well with a lot of practice, and maybe there's just a learning curve. I'm not terribly familiar with playing with a Xbox Connect anyway, so it could be that. So I would imagine they'll perfect it. Well, not necessarily perfect it, but make it better by the time the game is released on November 15th of this year. Just looking at the chat room to see if we have any, maybe one last question here before we wrap up this week's show. Just scrolling through. No, I don't have a PlayStation 3. I only have an Xbox 360 for Mickey Master, who is asking in the chat room. Jug Rocks 1 asks about the Frontierland shooting arcade, if there's an update there. No, it is closed for refurbishments at the moment. As far as I know, it's going to reopen at some point as the Frontierland shooting gallery. I'd hate to see that disappear. It's one of those little, smaller attractions at the Magic Kingdom that I always love to do every once in a while. Shooting galleries in general are something that I enjoy, so I would definitely hate to see that. Hate to see that disappear. There are a lot of interesting things popping up. I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Some interesting things popping up around the Magic Kingdom that seem to be interactive features, particularly in Adventureland, that are being installed mysteriously. And they may relate to that sorcerer experience thing that I talked about a few weeks ago, sort of Kim Possible type game, potentially going to the Magic Kingdom. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see if that is what that is all about. But point is, Frontierland Shooting Arcade, there were rumors that perhaps that was going to get replaced and moved into this whole new experience that isn't officially announced yet. I don't know. Just have to wait and see. So that's a long way of saying no particular updates for the Shooting Arcade at the moment. So, all right. I think we will wrap up the listener feedback there. And this is where we will end show 334 with a bit from the D23 Expo, a bit about Aulani, and a lot of little news tidbits and that kind of thing. I seem to be all caught up on listener feedback, I think. I hope I didn't miss any emails there. And if I do, I'll work it in the next week's show. Speaking of next week's show, I've got much more to share from the D23 Expo, in addition to presentation, audio, some really great presentations to share there, but also some more interviews as well. So stay tuned for all of that in the coming weeks, and then head on over to InsideTheMagic.net as well to find all of that and more in depth on these interviews that I played included this week on the show, as well as what will be featured in the coming weeks and everything that I've posted from the Expo so far. So much to cover over the course of 3 days. I was running all over the Anaheim Convention Center, and I'm happy to bring all of it back to you little by little over time. So I do want to thank Magical Travel for sponsoring this week's episode of Inside the Magic. You can find out more about their services by visiting magicaltravel.com. Also, help support us and get a free audiobook and 14-day trial of Audible over at audibletrial.com/InsideTheMagic. Everybody who signs up for a free trial there actually goes to support the show. It's very similar to making a donation, actually, and it doesn't cost you a thing. So, once again, audibletrial.com/InsideTheMagic. And, of course, Lanyard Lab is where you'll find me doing my day job throughout the week. And you find yourself in need of custom lanyards for a promotional purpose, or need to wear an ID or name tag around your neck, head on over to lanyardlab.com to get that rolling. Once again, InsideTheMagic.net is your source for Disney and theme park news between episodes of this podcast. You'll find us on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube there. We passed 10,000 followers at Twitter and 15,000 subscribers on YouTube and a whole bunch on Facebook. I don't even know the number over there. So find links for all of that and so much more over at our website. So that'll do it for this week. Thanks to all of you for listening, and all of you for chatting along live, and for watching later on YouTube and all of that each and every week. So have a magical week. Bye.
Tomorrow, shining at the end of every day. There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Just a dream away.